So this is a bit of a different listening or viewing experience for you today, tuning into the podcast, or if you want to watch this, I have it over on my YouTube channel for the Wildman Revolution. I've currently just completed a hike to the top of a place called Bald Rock. I'm not right at the top because it's windy as all shit, but there's 360 views all the way around. It's a giant granite rock, and there's more than that. It's in the northern New South Wales, just north of Tenterfield. It's amazing country, it really is. And I had something going through my head, and I just wanted to share it. I thought this would make, well, I believe it's probably a polarizing topic to talk about. Once upon a time, it probably wouldn't have been. But we live in a day and age where, yes, everyone has an opinion. They're like arseholes, everyone's got one. But with free speech under attack, I think we've got to celebrate everyone having an opinion, be it polarizing or not, because I feel it's healthy to have conversations like the one I'm about to share, what's been rolling through my head. Now, I've traveled Australia many, many times. I've explored many places, and it's almost like a spiritual thing for me. When I go to these places, I'm present. Sometimes it feels like I'm asking permission to come and climb a rock or swim in a river or experience the forest. There's something where I feel like I have a deep connection. Again, it's a bit of a spiritual thing for me. But just to come and explore the beauty that nature has to offer, especially in Australia, I think it should be open to everyone. I really do. And again, there's no order in what I'm going to share here, but stick with me on this. I'm going to do my best to not bring in my frustration with the government and the way they roll, but they do play a part in what we're seeing in Australia right now. You've got things like native title, sacred sites being closed off, like even near where I live in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales on the coast there, you got Wollumben, Mount Warning, that's been closed off for a while, and there's a lot of people up in arms about this. Closed for sacred sites reasons and things like this, even though it's been open for many years before. There's a lot of places around Australia like this out of the back of the lockdowns and everything, like parts of Cape York are still closed since then. There's other places that were closed for longer. Now, who knows what's going on with that, but a big part of it is this whole giving this native title thing. And to be honest, I don't fully understand it. But when you're separating society now in this day and age based on race, here we go. Even me talking about this, I could be labelled racist or whatever else we get labelled these days. But again, everyone's getting easily offended, and I think some people have just got to grow up and be willing to have some tougher conversations. And again, once upon a time, this wouldn't have been a tough conversation to have. But the closing of these national parks and giving them over to native title, all this sort of stuff because of sacred sites, we've got to say sorry, welcome to country, all this sort of stuff. Even I'm not sure what to call the Aboriginal people here, because even I know Ab has a different meaning. Indigenous is what I'm going to refer to them as, but I also saying that I feel like I'm Indigenous. I was born here. One thing that keeps going through my head is like what I respect about their culture, the Indigenous, and I learned a lot when I was in Western Australia from a lot of the elders over there. I took the time out to understand their history, not the history we've been fed in school and through the books and stuff. And it really opened my eyes, especially in Western Australia. Some of that sort of stuff that happened over there, the breeding out of the Indigenous and that, it's like horrific. It really is. But one thing that struck me when talking with the elders all them years ago was they always wanted us to partake and have respect for the land and visit sites and just have respect and connect. That was a theme all the way through, and I already was doing that, but it was great to hear that from them. But like any culture, there's a lot of distortions that have come out of this. There's a lot of people who have sold out, whether they've been coerced, whether they've been tricked, or whether they're just uneducated and want money and they're in desperate need. When the government comes into these things and they put titles on groups or think tanks and things like this, you've always got to be wary. And what's happened, I see with a lot of the Indigenous people and in Australia, a lot of them have gone into these government branches, and a lot of it's not for the betterment of them. Again, there's always this segregation of race and everything, and it's so bad in Australia. It's so inverted too. Again, every time someone has an opinion on something, and this is an opinion piece from me, you run the threat of being labelled or cancelled. And it's crazy, really. It's like, if you take a step back, it's so inverted and crazy, where I go to it again, where I come to these places and I think it's amazing, like, away from the busy life of work or the city. I'm not really in the city, but to come here and unplug, but not just unplug to get away from things, to really immerse in nature and like see the animals, communicate with the animals. Like, some people might think this crazy, but if you're just present, like you're present to another human, which a lot of people aren't this day and age, because that's why you probably think this is crazy, and you just be with their energy and you just notice so many more things. Bit of a tangent for a sec, like I might have shared this on the socials by now, I don't know, but I was canoeing. I love my fishing and exploring. I was canoeing up a creek right out in this amazing country here. It was pretty rough and pretty rugged, and I was dragging the canoe between the rapids and stuff, between the water holes and that, chasing the mighty Murray cod. But come up to it, and then there was a kangaroo going crazy on the bank. And I was like, what? It was caught in an old fence. And it was really interesting, the interaction. And I'm only sharing this bit of a tangent in relation to connecting in with the animals and being present. Again, something that in this day and age, most of you out there are not present even with your own loved ones. It's something that we all need to work on. Nature will help. But I'm like, holy crap. It was like, instantly, I was like, I felt like, fuck. I felt so bad for that kangaroo. It was trapped in this fence. And as I got closer to it, it got crazier, and I knew it was petrified and scared. And then I saw its leg. The wire was wrapped around its leg like 3 times, and then over its back and hooked back into the wire. I don't know how it done it. And it was all scruffed up. It probably was there for a day or more, and there was like bleeding down. The fur was all stripped off its leg. It was pretty bad. And I'm like, I just wanted to help this kangaroo. But it wasn't a huge one, but it was enough with its long claws and feet to kick the shit out of me. So I was very wary every time I went up to it. It got up and it was growling at me. I've never heard a kangaroo growl so much, and hissing and all this, shaking its head at me and all this. And I'm like, I really want to help this. How can I get to help this kangaroo when I can't get near it? So I went through this process of, I know from previous experiences with animals in the wild, like going down low, like I've caught like venomous snakes and everything like that before, like king browns and tiger snakes and all this. And when I pick them up, they're calm as, but I always start with this, all right, I want to come across as not a threat for this kangaroo. I need to go down low. And then it wasn't as scared. It still wouldn't let me get near it. I'd get close to going near the wire and no, it'd freak out and I'd have to jump. So I grabbed one of my jumpers and I'm like, what if I put the jumper over its face? And I went down and started doing something. Now, at first it attacked the jumper and it was clawing it up. But then I managed to get a tap on its head and just rub its head a little bit. And it was so interesting. And I was just like communicating with it. I'm like, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. And I was grabbing the fence and it settled a little bit. But then I moved away and I followed the wire back and I started undoing the wire right back up the fence. It was like 10 meters of wire. I'm like, what if I undid it right away from him and started doing that? Now I was there for well over an hour. So I undid one end of the fence wire and one end of the other wire. I had some pliers and stuff with me. And as I was doing it, I could see the kangaroo was watching what I was doing. And I moved the wire and it loosened just a little bit. And now instead of it going crazy, it started motioning towards its foot. Now, it's a little bit crazy, but it was like, it started to scratch at its foot. And I was like communicating with it, I know. And I was like so in my heart at this point. It's crazy what being present to another being does for you, especially when one's in pain. But then it started to cooperate with me. Now, every now and then it'd hiss and hiss, but I started noticing it doing this. It was like doing this to me, like that. And it wasn't a no. It was like, that's some way they communicate. I know that because every time it did that, I could get closer to it. And I started being able to pat it on the head. Then it'd rear up and it'd grab my hand, but it wouldn't rip it. It was fascinating how this rolled out over the hour or so. And then it started to allow me to start to unwind this wire. It was over 10 meters long, this wire. It was like crazy. And through this whole process, I was just reassuring it was okay. And again, it was fascinating to see this kangaroo. And again, I got some photos and a little video of this. I video things for my son when I'm out and about. Like, he wasn't with me this time. It's like, And I started videoing, not for the fact that, hey, look at this kangaroo, I'm going to save it. It was like, I was filming it for my son because I actually didn't think I was going to be able to save it. And I was a bit sad. And I get to educate my son about this sort of stuff too, River, and he loves it. But I was starting to get somewhere with this wire, and the kangaroo started to like shake its head a lot more at me, and it was motioning to its foot more, and it wasn't trying to escape. It wasn't growling at me. It was making this sort of like Skippy, which, if tuning in for when you're young, if you remember Skippy the bush kangaroo, oh my God, that was, you got to be, I'm in my mid 40s now, so that's an old one, but it was communicating with me. I don't know what it means. I have no idea, but it was still in fear, but it trusted me. And through this experience, I got the wire off, and it didn't want to move then. It thought it was still on there, but it let me pat it. It let me scrub its ears and its back. There was some roughed up fur on it. I was brushing off, and it wouldn't move because it still thought it was in so much pain. Its leg was pretty horrific, its leg. I think he'll survive, but I'll get to that soon why I think it'll survive. But so I just sat there with it. I just sat there, and literally my intention, what I was sharing energetically, I was like, everything's going to be okay. You're free. You're free. And yeah, it felt good, but it wasn't my intention just to feel good out of like freeing the kangaroo. It was like, fuck, there's another being. It was in pain. So this is all about this connection we have with like other beings and animals. And when I say beings, it's like human beings, like being present. It doesn't have to be in pain or anything. All the time when I'm out in nature, if I see a big water dragon or a snake or a lizard, I'm like, how are you, buddy? It's just what I do as part of my connection. And this is all part of the bigger conversation, I think, too, about... Anyway, back to the kangaroo, just if you're wondering. So I was able to push him just out of the water, and he let me do that. He growled at me and didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but he didn't try to attack me or anything. And then he laid down on the bank, and he started eating grass. And I was like, I just felt this overwhelming, he's okay. Awesome. That's as far as I needed to help him. And he was like cruisy. And I went hiking for another hour and a half, left my canoe there because I wasn't dragging it anymore, caught a couple of fish, had a good afternoon, come back, and he'd move up the bank, and he just looked a lot calmer. Now, he was still in pain, clearly, but who knows how long he'd been there. And I just said, I hope you're okay. And for me, again, it's like a spiritual experience. For me, it's like in life, we do a good thing for someone else. It's like we don't do it for something in return. I just did it because, holy crap, this poor kangaroo was trapped. And I really do hope that he's okay. It's probably the only context I use, hope, because he's left to the wild now. The reason I've thrown this in here, I feel, and I'm trusting what comes through, is because it backs to this connection with nature and being educated in nature. Now, I remember speaking to the elders many times. I don't know their names. I don't know where they're from. It was part of, in the mines, we needed to go get educated. And again, even that part of it is so distorted, but it was great to actually chat to these elders because they were talking about this connection with land, connection with country, about dreaming, and all these different things which I really resonated with. And that's when I was back in my working life. I was not spiritual. I was not. But I always had these experiences out and about. And it can only come when we're out in nature and immersed in it and have an intention to be present. And I remember what stuck with me a lot was like, explore, go experience these places, but have respect. And I can see why there's an element of society that want to close down a lot of these parks, because there is an element of society that doesn't have respect. There's an element of society that doesn't care on the surface. But I really feel that's rooted in a lack of education. A lack of education from the people who are connected to the land, who are only connected to the land from their own education and their own experience. So to cut off one section of society just because they're not educated from the education, from the information, you could call it passer on, the storytellers. How are we going to get educated on it? How are we going to get educated on this place? How are we going to get educated if the Indigenous want us educated in their culture? Here we go. I'll get it out. How can we get educated in their culture if the basis of their education is based in nature, is based in wandering the land and living on the land and living off the land, living with the land. To be locked out of it is, again, here's my opinion, is bullshit. But again, this is where the reach of the government comes in to distort this, to segregate, to separate, to divide, to then go and label. Again, this is probably me speaking from white privilege. I don't even know what the fuck that is. But seriously, I've probably spent as much time on the land as much as I can as so many Indigenous people in this day and age. I've probably spent more time on the land. So there's a little bit of my ego coming in. I'll chill that now, but I've got to share it, because I think the only way we can move forward in this country with this stuff is not give them back the land. Give who back the land? Like, this argument of they were here first, so they deserve. No, we're growing, evolving beings. Like, we move around. Like, the Indigenous came here from somewhere else too. This is what I believe. And I feel the way forward, and I'm open to anyone sharing something else on this, again, because it's part of my education and it's part of my experience. Even me sharing this and then putting it out there for feedback can be polarizing, but I think it's an important conversation to have right now, where we need to work together in a way from this place of getting a better understanding. And again, back to this word respect. I respect sacred sites, yes. I know there's a portion, a small minority of society that don't. They have no respect for anyone. But even in that, there's an opportunity for education. I remember once upon a time, I was a dickhead when I was a teenager. I was an arsehole. I was disrespectful. But I was growing up and I needed to be educated. I needed to learn a lot of life lessons to get to a place where I was able to listen to understand. But I go back to it. It's like, how can we have respect for places that we're not allowed in? How can we have respect for a culture that we're not educated on, or we're just being told to say sorry for things that we had nothing to do with? It's like, here's a little tangent, but it's relevant. Something that comes up for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you people, my ancestors, my lineage comes from England and Ireland. And tracing it back through my family, we were First Fleet convicts. We were slaves. Who knows what my relatives and everything done, but we came here as slaves. We got forced to come here. And some of my relatives got coerced to come here, or bribed, whatever language you want to use, or promised something. But anyway, that was a long time ago. From what I know, do I deserve an apology? I'm just dropping that in there because this is what goes through my head. And now I'm sitting out here and this is flowing through. I think these are all important things to say. Now, again, I think part of the solution is coming together and like giving this understanding. And it's not about separating, dividing and secluding. It's about education. It's about a willingness from the cultures in our country. Like, I swear, I feel like I'm Indigenous here. I was born here. I'm connected into the land. This is my home. There's nothing, and I can't see why there's something wrong with that. But then it's coming from this place of this always positioning a culture or a race to be a victim. And again, this is perpetrated for the reason of division. Again, governments and their puppet masters, they play this. This is the thing. But the way we combat that is what I'm talking about here, having level-headed conversations with the right people, and the right people are not the fucking government. There's some people in government that are great. There are. And I don't want to make this a bashing government thing. There are some great people coming through. But this is where we get to come through in that infrastructure, let's say, with more grounded, educated intentions. I don't know if that's the right word. But what I'm sharing here, why should we stop the youth of today, the up and coming generation, my son, everyone's sons and daughters from experiencing this? Because it's only when we experience this that we can understand it. And I feel that's my point in sharing all this. So again, it's a very different thing for me to share if you're listening into the podcast. I really do hope the sound's good and it hasn't been too windy. It is a big conversation starter, but again, I really do believe this trend of these national parks, these places being closed due to cultural reasons. That's what I was looking for before. Cultural. Spit it out, Steve. Why not we get better understanding from immersing ourselves in nature, where the indigenous themselves say they have a connection with the land, and if they want us to understand that, we need to be on the land. I hope that makes sense, because I know this is where I get my best education about nature, about the beings or the animals I meet, and most importantly, the best reflections for myself. The connection with me in this presence, in the harmony of nature. Everything is in harmony out here. So instead of bringing divide, separation, the labeling, the segregation, how about we approach this with some harmony, or with the intention of bringing harmony? Because that's what nature teaches us. That's what's in our face when we go for a bushwalk, when we go for a hike, when we go for a swim. Everything is working in harmony. And it even shows us too, when there's bushfires, things burn, but there's regrowth. In amongst the horror of that on the surface, everything is growing and evolving. You look at the rocks here, they've been weathered over time by the wind. Like, this is amazing, this place up here is so multi-dimensional, meaning you go from one spot and you've got the bush here and there's trees growing out of rocks and moss and everything. You go around the other side and there's these striped colour rocks where the water's been running off and the wind's worn it. You go around the other side and you can see for miles and miles out there, right around, and there's other peaks with rocks and trees, all in harmony. Think about that. So that's my piece. That's my opinion piece. Opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. So I definitely have an arsehole. I would love to hear from anyone who tuned into this. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know where this fits in what I'm about and what my thing is to put out to the world, and my business and my brand. But I know this is very, very important for the human experience to understand. It's like this connection with spirit, God, whatever. I'm not religious, but for me, the biggest part that keeps me grounded in this human experience is spending time in nature, be it by myself, which I do a lot, be it like exploring, and like I've mentioned in here, for some of you it might be a bit out there, talking and communicating with the animals. I really don't give a fuck. It's like, because it's something important to me, and whether it's with my family and definitely with my son. It's like so important for me to pass on this to my son when he's out here, so he can maybe, I'm not going to say avoid the mistakes that I made in life or avoid anything. He's going to get his own lessons, but to have a better understanding of this connection, have a better understanding of respect, have a better understanding of this wanting to know, which we all have in life, this longing to know more, which so many of us are lost touch with. There we go. Now this is from the heart now. Talk about my son and this comes through. Because if anything, yes, I know in my life, I spent 20 or more years making mistakes, doing stupid shit, being disrespectful to other people, to myself, like to my body, to all these things. I don't believe the next generation needs to go through 20 or 30 years of that learning of lessons when they can be better educated now from this grounded, harmonious place. I'm going to end on that. This has been the Wild Man Revolution podcast. Check it out on YouTube as well. The video version's up here if you want to have a quick view of nature. It's pretty windy here. But again, I would love to hear from you. And stay tuned for the next one.